everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Slumber Party podcast. I am your co-host, Amanda Jewson, founder and creator of Baby's Best Sleep. I'm here today with my BFF, Lisa Ramrine. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi. I have to be honest. I am like not as prepared as I usually am because I usually ask a question to my Instagram about what they want us to talk about, and then I forgot, and then so I just asked, and thankfully someone asked a question, and so bless this person on Instagram. And I think this is actually something that comes up a lot, and I do really want to talk about it. So anonymous person on Instagram says, co-sleeping during the newborn stage. Why is this so frowned upon? So I think this is a great opportunity to talk about a lot of the myths, a lot of the realities, and some of the risks involved in co-sleeping and why it has such a bad rap. So I want rap. There's so many.
I'm the backup singer.
Oh my gosh. You know those TikToks that are out right now? Have you seen them of the people who like take background singers and they're pretending to be the background singers and they do this like hand dance have you seen it?
I mean, I've seen all the TikToks, honestly.
Okay.
So I'm sure I have. I live
just
on
go
TikTok.
ahead and tick. I know. And my husband and it's so funny. We were talking about this. I just got back from Disney, from Florida. That should be a whole other podcast. How to go to bed at 8:30 every night when you're 40. Go to Disney. That's how you do it.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Got insomnia? Take your whole family to Disney. It'll figure that out for you real quick. You don't even have like Brad was like, want to watch the show? I'm like, literally. Okay. I had a existential conversation with Brad being like, I'm getting really clear on insomnia. Are we just not as active enough? Like I am having no choice but to sleep. And are we not active? Are we not moving? Are we at our desk? And we simply have not burned off enough energy for the day. That's, a whole other podcast episode, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I was thinking about, this topic in particular about so today is my daughter's 9th birthday. 9 years ago today, she was born. And let me just walk you a little hug. So a funny story about that is we were really having trouble naming our first daughter. And I said, hey, Lisa, ask the boys, what do they think a good name is? And Henrik said, he made this little video and he's like, I think we should name her Hug. And so we may have called her Hug for a little while. It was cute. She was a little hug.
It still says Hug birthday in my phone calendar for this day. Yeah.
Oh, she's such a little monkey. Okay, so she's born. And I knew that babies didn't sleep because 100 people told me. But I guess I was surprised. Like I thought that they would wake frequently. But when I had Winnie, I had her in the morning. Things were okay. And then I had to stay overnight. I had to stay one night. And I remember being like, okay, I'd rock her or I'd feed her. She'd fall asleep. It'd be like, great. I'd put her in the plastic thing that they had for babies in the hospital, and I put her down and she'd be up immediately. And I was like, what the fuck? And I'm like, doing this over and over again. It's like 1:00 in the morning. And I remember a nurse coming in to check on me. And I was like, hey, does someone take the baby at any point? She's like, no, that's yours forever. I'm like, right. Okay. Because, you watch a movie and someone takes your baby and it goes into a room with other babies and nurses look after them. I was like waiting for someone to come and take the baby for me. That doesn't happen. Just so you know, that doesn't
Not
happen.
In Canada.
The movies are lies. So they did all that. And so I'm doing all these things and she really wouldn't like sleep at all. And I remember holding her and kind of like dozing in the hospital bed. And then a nurse coming in and being like, that is so unsafe. You can't do that. That's the number one. And I was like, literally, there's no other way for her. She wants to be on me. I was just sitting. She was on my chest. I can't do anything about this. Thus beginning, my foray into sleep. Now, the short story of that is I am not good at co-sleeping. So I was like open to it. I brought her home. I kicked my husband out of the bed. We have a king size bed. I was like, you go sleep over there. I made lots of space, no blankets, but I still I couldn't shut my mind off about it. And we couldn't really co-sleep. So I made a concerted effort to move Winnie off my body ever so slowly. I would head over to my TikTok. I have like a literal video showing you what I did over 2 weeks. If you want to watch that, it's on my TikTok. So when people ask the question, why can't I sleep with my newborn? I swear, although that's not what we do at Baby's Best Sleep, I know exactly why you would want to do it. I know there's no options. I also know that my kid had a relatively chilled temperament that allowed me to move her off my body over 2 weeks. I know 7 years doing this job, working with literally thousands of clients, hundreds of newborns, that you don't really have an option sometimes. I understand you. So I am with you. So I'm going to talk on both sides here about why you would do it and why you really need to be thinking about safe sleep. And a disclaimer that I work in sleep, I cannot recommend anything to do that is not a part of the Canadian guidelines for safe sleep. So the Canadian Pediatric Association and the American Pediatric Association both say that co-sleeping is not safe and does contribute to SIDS. When you get really into, so I'm telling you that because I think it is really important for you to understand your own risk level when you do that. Mm-hmm. I am not recommending that anyone is co-sleeping. I also understand that everyone is making risk-based decisions every day, including the decision to sleep train, right? So there's no risk-free situations, but this is a part of the podcast where someone said I listened to Amanda Juson's podcast and she told me to sleep train, that I would be like, I am telling you not to sleep train, not to co-sleep. You can sleep train. I'm not telling you to co-sleep. Do not co-sleep. However, if you absolutely have to, and you want to, or it's for you, there's some things to consider. And actually, I think we're probably, my guess is we're going to see those guidelines soften from both countries pretty soon. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. Generally, what happens with co-sleeping, and we're still seeing, I don't have the exact source in front of me, and I hate when I don't, but I'll try to find it and link it in the notes. But we are still seeing a considerable amount of unsafe sleeping situations leading to infant deaths. This is also why the American Academy of Pediatrics and honestly the entire United States government really pull back on any sleep assistive devices. These are things like baby sleep positioners, baby swings, anything that has a baby sitting upright, the snuggle me's, the swaddle me's, the the DockATots. These are all considered unsafe sleep devices. And generally because they, when you look at the deaths of babies and, even one death is too much, we're looking at babies that are using these products for an extended period of time and not in the way that they were ever intended. So there are really significant risks to using these products. But then when you tell all these parents, okay, you can't use this, you can't use this, you can't do that, you can't co-sleep, you can't do that, what ends up happening is you end up being Amanda in the hospital with a baby on you, laying on your couch. Now, the couch is the single most dangerous place where you can be sleeping with your baby, and it happens by accident all the fucking time. So, and then when you look at the data of who that's happening to, it's generally happening to marginalized communities, racialized communities, low income communities, and communities with less education. So, if we can just get the word out about safer options, personally, I'm of the belief that there is probably a way to do this safely. And with all of that information, I think you're probably going to see, just going back to the American Academy of Pediatrics and Canadian Pediatric Association, softening their guidelines on safe sleeping to include safer co-sleeping options. Because if we can say, hey, you sleep in a bed in these certain situations, you're going to lessen the chance that baby's sitting on a couch with a parent.
Yes.
Bam.
Yeah.
Lisa, you've done some co-sleeping in your day. What did you do
Lots of
to work for
co-sleeping.
you?
It was really survival. It's not always my first choice. And like, just like what you're saying, I've be holding the baby in bed and like falling asleep and all that. So, yeah, I mean, like what you're saying is everybody has to assess the risk that they're willing to take. And both my husband and I are extremely sensitive sleepers. And I, so much more when I first have a child and when I'm postpartum. And my husband is extremely sensitive sleeper. Like he, you move and he wakes up. So um that worked in our favor. You have to know yourselves, right? Like in the way that you operate and the way that you sleep. And so I felt comfortable with him sort of, and like, and the baby being with us. But it wasn't really like an overnight sleep situation. Like I always had a baby sort of beside me in the crib or bassinet. And it would be the 5 a.m. or the 4 a.m. wake ups, right? Where you just want to extend that morning a little bit longer and they just fall asleep so sweetly. And then that had to end, because of the obvious thing that happens. So you have the baby with you, and then they just start to wake up a little earlier, and creeping up, and then the baby is in your bed by 2 a.m. instead of the 5 a.m. And that just, so we had to cut that off. But again, it was just for survival. It was those scary moments where I'm sitting in the rocker with her or with one of my sons, and clearly falling asleep and having the chance of dropping the baby, right? So that is that is the scary part that happens. And
Totally.
it scared me so much that that was our scenario. But it was reluctant co-sleeping. It wasn't as much as I love the idea and the cuddles. Like, it is very scary, and it always made me uneasy, but we had to do it for survival. And like we just had to clear out all the blankets and like really have nothing around the baby and no pillows. And and that was us.
And and I think that there, when I hear of people, when there's a lot, so because of these risks, because of those, there are unsafe ways to co-sleep. If you were sleeping on a super soft mattress with a ton of blankets and pillows, perhaps you're inebriated, perhaps you are a substance user and you don't hear or feel or wake. I mean, those are all possibilities, right? So it is more risky than not. Before I talk about co-sleeping specifically and some evidence around safe co-sleeping, I also want to mention that there are several products now that allow for the baby to be in your bed right next to you, but with a barrier for you, so you don't roll on them. So we use the Halo Bassinet, and by the way, this is such an argument for assessing each child individually for what their issues are. So like, I got the bassinet, being like, all babies want to sleep with their parents. I got this $400 bassinet, which was like a lot at the time. And my second daughter was like, double middle fingers. I don't care about you. I can sleep wherever. I can sleep however. I don't need to be in bed. And in fact, when I'm in bed with you, that'll make me fussy. So I want more space. And you're like, oh my God, I wish I had this. So there are lots of contraptions nowadays, and honestly, baby sleep products are coming out at the speed of light. I would take a look at what's out right now. But Emily Oster,
by the way, I loved the bassinet, and I think you passed yours down to me. And that was the solution that we had. Like, that was so helpful, and just feeling her and hearing her, and she's right beside your face, and like there's so many settings to adjust it, right? And it's such a great, right? Is it?
And you can
it's
buy
not
them.
The thing that goes in. Yeah. It's like the one that stands beside your bed, right? Yeah.
That's right. And it if you really want to do that weaning, you can like a little swivel it out, and it's honestly, it was so great. It's a really good bassinet. Yeah. I would buy it used if it's out of your budget too, because most people only use it for 3 or 4 months. Like it's not something that gets a lot of use. I believe that bassinet has been passed through like 4 members of my family at this point.
Yeah, and it went to Clayton's cousin. So thank you.
There you go. The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
So when we want to talk about safe co-sleeping options, this is like the millionth time I'll recommend Emily Oster's book, Crib Sheet. And the reason why I keep recommending Emily Oster specifically, it's not because I don't have a lot of resources. It's because what Emily does, or Professor Oster does in her work, is she distills the best evidence. So she's looking at a range of studies, a range of evidence, and then she puts the best, most convincing evidence in the book for you to make your decision. So within the book are several sources that you can go and do additional research on. She also starts the book, I've said this before, explaining what a good study is. Now, I had to go back to school to learn this, and this is why when you look at people throwing out, well, I read this study and I read this study. What I love about Crib Sheet is she gives you like a checklist to assess a study. Not all studies are created equally. We need to think about the amount of the sample size, who's reporting on it, etc. Anyway, she goes all over that in the book. But there is a chapter in her book called Sleep, Position, and Location. And so she talks about, sleeping on the back. So we know, and she talks about this in the book, immediately when, in the 80s, you would put babies on their tummy to sleep, because babies do sleep really well on their tummy, by the way. But we were doing that when we did the Back to Sleep campaign, I believe in the early 90s. So we told parents, put your babies to sleep on their backs. The rate of SIDS, and SIDS is a catch-all for any unexplained infant death. SIDS and asphyxiation are 2 different things. Someone will yell at me on the internet about that. I'm aware of that. I'm going to use SIDS interchangeably for all unexplained infant death. But when we had unexplained infant death, the rates dropped so dramatically. I believe, I'm going to mess it up, anywhere from like 80 to 90%. So early 1990s, I'm going to see. Okay. In the surveys done in 1992, this is 2 years after the implementation, the researchers found that around 70% of babies were put to sleep on their stomach. By 1996, this figure was only 20%. I want to get the actual number. There's a number in here, and I should have highlighted it. Anyway, it just was like crazy Okay, with these changes in sleep position came changes in incidence in SIDS. SIDS rates rose after the stomach sleep recommendation and fell after parents were told to put their child to sleep. Anyway, I think she starts to talk about it. And this, by the way, it doesn't go for, or this recommendation isn't appropriate for babies that are rolling on their own. That's not something you can control. We're talking about newborns specifically in this episode, and that's what I'm going to talk about in terms of that evidence. So, okay. Then if you have the book in front of you, on page 119, Oster goes through SIDS deaths by behavior, because we don't know, although in the last year or two, they've linked SIDS to a missing protein, I believe, or that can be easily identified through a genetic test at birth. So I think you're probably going to start to see those tests happen. They're not 100% sure, but that's a new theory. But in terms of why you get the recommendations you do about room sharing, no co-sleeping, they're based on behaviors of the parent. So when you look at, and I'm going to show the camera here, there's a little chart here. Oster includes a chart on SIDS death rates by behavior. So when you had a bottle feeding, both smoking, mother drinking, like parent and like both parents smoking and the mother drinking, well, the SIDS rates were extremely high. They are the highest that we see out of those behaviors. Now, obviously, there are probably, if we're thinking about people who are already doing risky behaviors like drinking every day and smoking every day, knowing those health risks, there's probably other factors that are impacting their decisions to do that and probably how they parent, right? So generally, that's an argument that comes up. I'm not smoking, I'm not drinking, I'm fine. The other is breastfeeding, both smoking and no alcohol. With no alcohol, we see the risk go from quite like it almost halves the risk simply by breastfeeding. Okay. Then we see breastfeeding, mother smoking, no alcohol, that decreases further. Finally, when we get to breastfeeding, no smoking, no alcohol, and co-sleeping, we see the risk go from not bed sharing from 0.08% risk to 0.22 risk for those who chose to bed share. So it's double the risk, but it's a marginal risk. Okay. And obviously, this tells us there are behaviors associated with co-sleeping that can actually quite limit your risk of dangerous things happening, meaning that you're breastfeeding, if possible, no smoking, no alcohol. Obviously, you want to make sure in terms of that asphyxiation risk that there's nothing in the bed that would be scary. Making sure that the baby's not swaddled under a blanket. Like, these are all things that you need to think about when you're doing that. And honestly, if you want to do a really big deep dive, I really love this chapter in the book because I think it's very balanced. She's not trying to convince you in any way to co-sleep or not. And then I did a very vague, high level explanation of like how to do good, like co-sleeping well, about risk to co-sleeping. But then I want to answer the question specifically. Why is co-sleeping frowned upon? My guess is that it can be seen as dangerous. And there are dangers. You are increasing your risk of asphyxiation or SIDS by co-sleeping. But we also make many different choices within our day that have risk. We put babies in cars. We drive. That's a risk, right? Nothing is a risk-free decision. And I think that the medical community is very anti-co-sleeping. And it's just like me. We have to follow guidelines and there's liability involved. If I said, don't worry, just co-sleep, and then something bad happens, you could attribute that to my advice and I couldn't practice anymore. So people are very careful around that. The other thing that gets thrown around, and this is a totally different topic, whether you're co-sleeping or not, a lot of people shame how people are helping their children get to sleep. So co-sleeping is a way to help your child get to sleep. They like it. It's comfortable. Sometimes a parent really likes it. And then people get, people are pissed off when anyone's doing anything that they're not. Honestly, it's oh, co-sleeping? You're going to do that for your whole life. Like, no, you won't. You don't have to do that. The day you want to change, you can just make that change. No one says that.
Start making changes. Yes.
Immediately. Like, Lisa, how old are your kids? You are not co-sleeping anymore. You don't have to do that anymore.
No,
and the day that you decided you wanted to sleep train, you were able to turn it around.
And I said, I need some help. Yeah. And that was the thing, is like, it did feel good. Like, it did feel nice to have her. It did extend our sleep. It was nice to wake up and see our little baby, and especially like my third, like she was very good at sleeping in the bed, and like she wasn't a big mover and she really liked it. And but the day we wanted to change it, the day that it became noticeably harder and it stopped to serve a purpose for us, right, which was to get a little bit more rest. If she's coming into our bed earlier and earlier and earlier, then it defeats the purpose. So then we had to change things around. And that is all parenting is like figuring it out in the moment and making little shifts and little changes. And like nothing is ever black and white and nothing is ever solid and decided, aside from we want to keep our kids safe and good.
That's it. Yeah. So if the question about being frowned upon, look, there are risks associated Doctors have to say what they have to say. People have to give you the right information. There are risks associated with everything that we do, though. So it's really a parental decision. It's not one that I can say you should do. If you do decide to do it well, do it safely. If, this is going like, people say, my mother-in-law says I shouldn't cuddle the baby to sleep. I'll be doing that forever. If you want to, you will be. But if you don't want to, you can change that. And so don't let other people's judgments about how you sleep impact anything. Like, you should just do what brings everyone the most rest. You should just do anything that makes you show up better for your family. That's the end of that story. And if someone says that to you, I'm going to give you a line that you can say. Well, actually, I really enjoy co-sleeping right now, and we're getting a lot of sleep and we're doing it safely. And if I decide to change that later on, there's no evidence to suggest that if I want to make this change and institute some behavioral changes, I can't. So thank you for your input. Go fuck yourself. No, don't say that last part.
Yeah.
But, go away. No, don't say that, because then
drink instead.
like you did.
Much more helpful.
The day I gave birth to Winnie, 2 days after, I should say, Lisa came and she's like, I brought you some sangria. I've perfected my sangria. I was like, sweet. I can't wait. I drank one glass and I didn't move from my couch. So thank you, Lisa. That is what you should do.
Yeah.
I actually, okay.
When you have a baby.
I want to, she's like, here's my speed dial. Okay, Lisa, this is actually what we need to do. When someone judges how you're sleeping, you can just say, where's my drink? Just say that. Where's my drink? I see a lot of this and I don't see a lot of this. And maybe it's on alcohol. Yeah. Bring me a coffee. Bring me a tea.
Yeah.
Whatever you need. It's a lot of this. Or like, where's my snack? Yeah. Bring me my snack.
Yeah. Be like, well, you know what would actually be helpful is bring me a meal.
100%. Because this is not helpful, nor is it accurate. No. Cool. Well, we've hit 27 minutes. That's our crap nap time. Thank you for joining us on the Slumber Party podcast. You can find more information on my Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Baby's Best Sleep. Pretty easy, BABYS. You can go check out the blog. You can book a discovery call. We work worldwide with families. We've worked on every continent, which is pretty cool, except the continent where people don't live. But any continent where there is a person, we have worked there. And we really want to help. So come and find us. Have a good one, Lisa.
Thanks.